Okay, so looking at this jacket, you can see here, I'll zoom in, you can see that the edges are raw, and you can see that white line, that's the interfacing showing through. That's not too cute to me. It's all raw edges, even up onto the lapel, and the lapel and the collar and everything. Zoom out here so I can show you the inside. For the lining, I used a sheet that I picked up at the thrift store, and that turned out really just fine. The lining even extends into the pockets here. Even just that part took an immense amount of time to figure out what the pattern instructions were talking about. When you've never sewn a garment before, it's all Greek to you when you're trying to read what's going on. It's not natural to understand what they're talking about. So I'll put this jacket on so you can see what it looks like on me. So this is how the jacket looks, on me. The shoulder pads, you'll have to excuse, there's no shoulder pads, so the sleeves are a little bit caved in. And, I'm looking at this on the monitor, and it actually doesn't really look half bad. The style is it's a Burda pattern, so it's got a little, to me it's a little costumey, it's a little bit long. I'm tall, but not, the sleeves are about the right length. The jacket itself seems a little bit long. This is a problem that I had, is that these vents wanted to fly open. The lining I didn't really attach to the back of the jacket. I did kind of the cheating method where I just kind of hem the lining up. So that's not really done right. I had a problem also with these front, I ripped them out and didn't take the thread out. With these front, I had a problem with these front darts. You really can't see them on the screen probably, but the instruction just said to close, sew the front darts closed. Well, that's great. So they're actually cut on the inside. They're cut open. But the problem is that if the instructions don't say how to close the dart, they're just assuming that you do it the standard way. But if you've never sewn a jacket, what is the standard way to close a dart? So I did it, so I said, well, I'm just going to assume that it's a 5/8 seam allowance like everything else on this jacket. And I did it with a 5/8 seam allowance, and it pulled the front in too much. And I ended up getting these V's. You can kind of see if I pull it right there, you get a V shape there. And so what I did was I ended up re-sewing them with more like a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which seemed to help that problem quite a bit. Now that I look at it on the screen, I think it took so long to make the jacket that by the time I was finished with it, I was just completely sick of it. And now when I'm coming back to it, I'm like, well, it's really not. It's not terrible. It's definitely a wearable jacket. So let's see what else has been going on this week in sewing. This week's sheet find. I picked up this great sheet. I leave the price tag on it. It was marked $1.98, but it was green, which means I believe I got it at least 30%, if not 50% off. I think it's a nice sheet. It's definitely polyester-y, but I like the green, and it's a great sheet. Someday I'll have to show you my entire sheet collection. It's extensive. But, for a dollar, this will make a great, I don't know, something. Like you saw, I just lined that jacket with a sheet. Sheets are very versatile. You can use them as muslins. You can't buy this much fabric at the fabric store for $1 or $2. It's just not possible. But wide, and sheets are great. So that's this week's sheet find. In the sewing machine, I listed one of my Necchi Supernova sewing machines on eBay this week. It was kind of a hard decision to come to, but I got a new industrial sewing machine. I could tell you the story of my industrial sewing machine. I've been looking for, I sew a lot of jeans and denim and kind of thick, heavy material. And I've been kind of in the market for an industrial sewing machine, but these things are very expensive. They're kind of big, heavy, bulky, type stuff. And, they last forever, and they're meant to be used commercially, which means that they catch a premium price. Even old vintage used ones that are 40 years old are very expensive because they work forever. So I just happen to be checking, I'll check Craigslist, regularly. This is the kind of thing you'd have to ship freight, and that's very expensive. So I check Craigslist for industrials, and and I've heard stories of people finding inexpensive industrial sewing machines, just by fluke or by luck. And so I just happened to get the feeling that maybe I should check, there wasn't anything in my local area, but maybe just check an hour away. Because I was figuring, well, an hour's drive, that's okay. Figure out the cost of gas, and I'll drive an hour for a sewing machine. So I just happened to check over the border in Florida, and wouldn't you know it, there was a listing it was actually for 3 industrial sewing machines for $500. And then opening up the Craigslist ad further, there was a hemming machine, industrial hemmer, which I'm not exactly sure what that is. There was an industrial serger, I think a 3 or 4 thread industrial serger, and the industrial sewing machine I got, which was listed as a straight stitch industrial. Well, looking at the picture, I was looking at that, and it's a FAF 138, but they didn't mention the model in the photo. In the actual listing. So doing a little bit more research, I found some photos of FAF industrial sewing machines, and I found the one that was listed, and it's actually a zigzag sewing machine. So I called the number, and of course the number didn't work. So I emailed the ad listing, the person who listed the ad, and it was someone who had listed the sewing machines for a friend, and so she passed along the number and who I was supposed to talk to. Well, to make a long story short, I ended up driving out there, and for $100 I picked up a beautiful FAF 138 industrial sewing machine. So, getting it home and sticking it in my sewing room, I realized that my balance of sewing machines had shifted. For heavy sewing, this is going to start becoming my go-to machine. So therefore, I have 2 of these Necchi Supernovas, and they're great machines, but I don't, the reason I had 2 of them was because if I'm sewing jeans, and I like to use 2 colors of thread to sew jeans, it becomes very tedious to, you want to switch colors, and it's not like you can sew one, when you're sewing jeans, you don't sew one color all the way through, and then you decide to splash around some of the other color here and there. When you're in construction, you're like, well, I want to put, if you want to put your accent color in a certain spot, you have to do that in the process of construction. You can't put it on at the end, which means, if you only have one sewing machine, it means, rethreading the sewing machine, changing your bobbin, doing all that work. That can be, tedious, to say the least. You can spend, for, a 12-hour sewing project, you could spend an hour and a half just changing your thread over. So that's why I had 2. I had them set up side by side with 2 different colors of thread, which made it very easy to I could just switch back and forth between machines. But now that I have this machine, I can use this machine for the main stitching, the industrial for the main stitching, and one of the Supernovas for my accent color. So what happened was, in my sewing room, I have my industrial machine, and I'll show a picture of how my setup is now. I have my industrial machine, and then I have my Supernova, and I realized that I didn't have enough space on my sewing table, so I started moving machines off that I really didn't need, that were kind of duplicate machines in my setup, and it kind of made me sad to see the Supernova kind of banished to the floor. I didn't need this. It was more machine than I needed, and so I thought, well, what a great thing to pass this machine along to the next person. And I didn't, it wasn't, the reason I have multiples of these machines is because they're amazing machines, but they're not really expensive. If you look on, eBay, or you just check around, or you keep your eye out, you can pick one of these things up. I've heard stories of people finding them for $20 at a thrift store. I think I may have paid around $100 for my machines. I probably didn't pay too much more than that. So I thought, well, it's time for me to list a Supernova. So this is the Supernova that I listed.